Good evening and welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming up with a new lesson, and this is the second chapter in Flamingo class 12th, and the name of the lesson is Lost Spring. Lost Spring, it has been written by Anise Jung, and in this chapter she is talking about the grinding poverty and the traditions leading the children to the life of exploitation. This story especially is very relevant to today's circumstances, and it talks about a very burning topic, that is child labor. With the coming up of RTE Act, Right to Education Act, it has been made compulsory that a child falling under the age of in the age group of 6 to 14 years cannot be employed on any kind of dangerous work, even by their parents. So of course I will talk about this later on. First of all, if we talk about the introduction of the chapter, this chapter has two parts. Part 1 talks about Simapuri, which is on the eastern border of Delhi, and the second part talks about Firozabad, a city which is famous for making bangles. Now first of all, I'll come on the justification of the title. The title of the story is Lost Spring. We'll just try to find out why this lesson is called Lost Spring. So before getting further, let's talk about the term spring. Spring is a season which stands for new life, new energy, enthusiasm, lots of vigor and vitality. And if you talk about spring in human life, it comes in childhood, as the author believes. She believes that spring comes in human life in the stage of childhood, and if we talk about childhood, we are primarily concerned with the age group of 6 to 14 years. Now even the law admits that, and that's why this Right to Education Act came. And it came later on, but the story was written earlier. But then that's the beauty of the author. The author can foresee the situation. All the facts of this story are primarily of about 2001 or 2002. So we'll just take up all the facts, keeping in mind the situation of Delhi, Simapuri, Firozabad in the year 2001. Now coming back to spring. Spring is a season, and the spring comes in human life in the stage of childhood. This is first thing that you need to understand. Now, if you talk about a child, where does he learn the things? First, from his family. Second, from his surroundings, the place where he lives. And third, the most important one is the school. Now, school is the first place the child comes out of his home, comes into a different environment, and day one when he is in the school, he realizes that, well, there are others also like him and he needs to survive with them. So the process of socializing starts in the school. It actually lays the foundation of the life of a person. Now he learns a lot in the school. It's his overall development that he gets into the school. Now there is a very important issue that deprives a child from his right to go to the school. Half of his spring is lost. Half of the spring from his life is lost. And put the same child under child labor, or make the child earn his own livelihood, or make the child someone who helps the survival of the family. I'm sure you understand, if I talk about the child, then I'm primarily concerned with the child falling under the in the age group of 6 to 14 years. So deprive a child from his right to go to the school, number one, and make the child earn his own livelihood. That means there is no spring left in his life. And that is why this chapter is known as Lost Spring stories of stolen childhood, rather two stories of stolen childhood. So two different stories, two different persons, two different circumstances, but the theme of the circumstances are same. That is poverty, child labor, and in both the stories we find the same thing. Now, there is a very legal kind of point here. I'm just trying to explain why it is illegal on the part of the parents even to put their child under child labor. This is illegal. I'll just try to take the help of an example for your understanding. Now, if there is someone who commits suicide, then if he dies, the case is closed. But if he survives, then under law, he is put under rigorous imprisonment for 7 years. Now, there is a very valid question on the part of the person trying to attempt suicide. It's my life. It's my decision whether I want to survive or not. There comes the law. And the law says, the Constitution says that your life is not your life. Your life is the property of the state. Your life belongs to the state. That's why if a person is murdered, then that is a crime against the state. Because a life has been taken away which belongs to the state. State is the government, the Constitution. Now, a person is not allowed to commit even suicide because he's trying to take away a life which belongs to the state. Now, there is a big question that when your own life is not your own life, how can you claim on the lives of your children? So the moment you say, well, he is my son and I can make him do anything. Excuse me, stop. You can't. The law is there, the state is there. In our Indian context, because we just take the things for granted. I mean, now the things are luckily changing, but if you talk about 25, 30 years back, the way the children were treated at home, because people were not aware, now things are changing. So because of this law, even if a father puts his own child under child labor and which involves the child into any dangerous kind of work, this is illegal. Now you need to keep this in mind that why even a rag picker who has been appointed by his father to go for rag picking, or a bangle making child who has been appointed by his father to make bangles even at his home is illegal. So two aspects you need to understand. And with this was the justification of title, Lost Spring, because there is a loss of spring in the life and the lives of the children of two places, Simapuri and Firozabad. So this was the part of introduction and this was the part of justification of title. Yeah, let's start with the first part of the story. As I told you, there are two parts. The first part is related to Simapuri and we are talking about that part only, and the title of the part is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. Now, I will start the story from the point of Simapuri, although it comes later on third page of the chapter, but it's very necessary to make you understand the condition of Simapuri well in advance. And as I told you that the story has the facts of about 2001 and 2. So all the calculations of the time we'll have to make from 2001. Author says that Simapuri was a wilderness about 30 years ago. Now, if the author is talking about the conditions of 2001, then 30 years ago falls in 1971. And in 1971, a very important incident took place, and that was Indo-Pak War. And in that war, the eastern Pakistan was separated and a new country came up, and that was Bangladesh. So the part one relates to that particular war. So 30 years back, Simapuri was a wilderness. The wilderness term has come from wild. Wilderness is a place which is the uncultivated land which is left for gaining fertility. Here wilderness means no, not a single human being lived there in Simapuri in 1971. Author says that it is still a wilderness, although about 10,000 squatters inhabit the place. Now, if 10,000 people are living in a place, how can it be a wilderness? But then, this time, this term wilderness is symbolical. Although about 10,000 people are living there, but they are living under the most unhygienic condition, under the utmost poverty. So let's try and find out who these squatters were, and by the way, what are the squatters? So squatters are the people who live in transit homes. Here squatters means refugees. Refugees from Dhaka, refugees from Bangladesh. Due to the war conditions, a majority of them migrated from Bangladesh, now Bangladesh, then Eastern Pakistan. So migrated from Dhaka to India. They moved to the bigger cities in search of food. A group of them came to Delhi and they reached Simapuri. Now they started living there, and in the span of 30 years, there has been absolutely not much change in their living condition. Even at that time they were very poor, even now they are very poor. So they are living under the utmost poverty. They live in the houses of mud structures with roofs of tin or tarpaulin. They are deprived of the basic civic facilities like drainage, sewage or running water. That makes their living conditions most unhygienic, the place where they live. As I told you that they don't have any other means of survival except rag picking. So rag picking is the only means of survival for the people living in Simapuri, who are the squatters or refugees from Bangladesh. Now if rag picking is the means of survival, then there have to be rag pickers. And if we talk about rag pickers, then obviously mostly rag pickers are the children falling under that particular age group of 6 to 14 years. So this is how the author has related this, and all those rag pickers and their living conditions, their economic conditions, and the way they are surviving, everything is being talked about in this part, in this chapter, in the first part of this chapter. As I told you that the rag picking children were there. So the children of Simapuri, they are basically rag pickers. They go to different areas for picking up rags. A group of rag pickers came in the neighborhood of the author. The author got hold of one of them, and the child whom the author get hold of to talk, his name was Sahib. Now a conversation starts with Sahib and the author, and the conversation between the two is the entire chapter. Now she just asked him, the first question that she asked the child, why do you do this? This means rag picking. He said, well, I don't have anything else to do. Then the author asked, I'm just trying to explain this point, hollowness of dead bodies. I've just divided the chapter on the basis of the short questions that you will be getting it from the chapter. So first I'm taking up the hollowness of advice. So first she asked, why do you do this? Sahib said, well, I don't have anything else to do. Then she further asked, why don't you go to the school? Now this is a question, but at the same time, this is a kind of advice also. So why don't you go to the school? Of course, Sahib wanted to respond. But before Sahib could respond, the author immediately realized. And what did she realize? She realized the hollowness of her advice. Hollowness is irrelevance. She felt that although she advised Sahib to go to the school, but this was not a proper advice because it was irrelevant. She was advising a child to go to the school who is fighting hard for survival. So she immediately realized that this was not a very good kind of advice. But then Sahib was there to respond, and he responded, he said, well, I don't go to the school because there is no school in my neighborhood. Then the author, just out of not very serious kind of, she just asked her, well, if I make a school or if I open a school for you, will you come to that school? Sahib said, well, why not? I'll definitely come to your school. But remember, this was a casual promise, just a said statement, that's it. She was not serious about that. But that poor child took her serious. After some time, he came running to her and said, ma'am, is your school ready? Now, I'm just trying to explain you this point, embarrassment. Now the child came running to her and asked, ma'am, is your school ready? And she felt embarrassed. Embarrassed at having made a promise which was not meant to be fulfilled. But then she just said that, well, promises like mine abound in his bleak world. Now this is a kind of explanation. She's just trying to defend herself. And she says that, I just made a promise of opening a school. But there are so many false promises that are made by the people, especially during the time of elections, that are never fulfilled. So it's just a part of his bleak or dark world to get promises like that. Then the author asked him, what's your complete name? And he said that his complete name was Sahib-e-Alam. Sahib-e-Alam. Alam in the universe. Sahib is the Lord. So this means Lord of the universe. Now she says that it would be very difficult for Sahib to understand or to accept what his name truly represents. Because Lord of the universe and picking up rags for survival, unbelievable. He won't believe it. He won't accept the fact. But then she got hold of more children. There were a few more children. She started talking to them. And she just found a child. He was barefoot, not wearing chappals. She asked him, why aren't you wearing chappals? The child said, because my mother didn't bring them down from the shelf. There was another boy standing just beside him, and he said, well, even if she does it, he won't wear. The author said, why? She asked, why won't he wear? And the author said that she had been to the different parts of the country, and there was one unique thing, that she mostly found the rag pickers barefoot, not wearing chappals or shoes. So she often asked them, why aren't you wearing shoes or chappals? And they gave a very queer kind of answer. And they said that, well, remaining barefoot is the part of our tradition. Author says nonsense. If there is anyone in the world who needs a pair of shoes, the rag picking child is the first one. The rag picker is the first one who needs pair of shoes because he has to work on garbage dumps. There are so many broken glasses, nails and other things that might injure his legs. Now these children are saying that, well, this is a part of our tradition. We don't wear shoes. Author says, no, this is just a kind of excuse to explain away their poverty. The simple fact is that they can't afford to purchase a pair of shoes. So they are saying that this is the part of our tradition. The author met a man from Ujjain. The man told her that when he was a child, his father was a priest in a temple. Now, whenever he went to the school, every day he used to make a prayer to the God, and he used to tell the God, God, please provide me with a pair of shoes. When he finally got a pair of shoes, he made another prayer to the goddess, requesting her that let him never lose them. Now, through the example of the man from Udupi, the author is trying to tell us the importance of shoes in the life of children. The author said that she visited the same town of Udupi after 30 years. She went to the same temple where the man's father was a priest when the man himself was a child. The temple was lost in the air of desolation. That means the temple was in a very bad condition. And when a temple is in a desolated condition, that means there are not many worshippers who come to that temple because it was in a bad condition. The priest lived behind the temple. It was almost afternoon. The priest's son came back from the school. He threw his bag on the folding and he again started taking off his shoes. Now the author saw that child wearing a pair of shoes, and then she was reminded of people living in Simapuri. Now she makes a comparison between the two. He says that in the span of 30 years, even the priest of a temple can afford to purchase a pair of shoes for his child. But in the span of 30 years, there are many in Simapuri who are still shoeless. So the purpose of bringing in the example of Udupi is to draw a comparison between two places. One is Udupi, and especially a priest of a temple, and second one is people living in Simapuri. And author wants to say that there has been not many changes in the economic status or financial status of the people living in Simapuri. Now she says that Simapuri, as you can see, is a place which is on the periphery of Delhi. Now this term periphery means outskirts, on the border of Delhi. Yet it is miles away metaphorically. Metaphorically, the term comes from metaphor, that is comparatively. So the author is clear about this thing that if you compare Simapuri with Delhi itself, Simapuri lags far behind. I have already told you about the condition of people living in Simapuri earlier itself, when they lived in the houses of mud structures with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. Then they were deprived of the basic civic facilities of drainage, sewage and running water. So in terms of development, there is no comparison between Simapuri and Delhi as the capital of India or Delhi as a city. Then she picks up another important issue, and that is related to identity. Identity as a citizen of a country. Now, all those people who had migrated from Dhaka and who came from Bangladesh, who came to Simapuri, now they didn't have the identity of the citizen of India. And since they were not living in Bangladesh, so they had lost their identity of Bangladesh as well. So the author met one of the women and she asked her, why don't you get back to Bangladesh where you have green fields and so many rivers and so many things? The woman said, well, there is nothing left. Then the author asked her, what was the point of living here without identity? Then the lady, she made a statement and she said, food is more important for survival than identity. She said that we are okay here even without having identity, because we don't have any problem living here without identity if we don't have to go to bed with aching stomach. So we are getting food and that's okay for us. And that's almost true in their condition, because they have their names in the ration cards, they have their names in the voters list, they get grades at the subsidized rates, and they are surviving well. So identity is not an issue for them. So they are happy living here without identity. Next point is rag picking, a fine art. Now, these people, they have been involved in rag picking for years, and it has taken the shape of a fine art because they have trained themselves to take out the maximum possible useful things from the garbage dumps in the least possible time. So this is how their work has become artistic. So they say that the author says that this rag picking, it has taken the shape of a fine art. Now I'm going to talk about all these points as you can see on the board, and I'm starting with two different meanings of garbage. Now author says that garbage has two different meanings for the elders and for the children. To the elders, garbage is their means of survival. It is their daily bread. It is their roofs on their heads. So garbage is almost everything for the elders. But if we talk about the children, to the children, garbage is something which is wrapped in wonder. Because Sahib says that sometimes I even find a 10 rupee note in the garbage. And when he finds a 10 rupee note in the garbage, he doesn't stop scrounging, because if there is one note of 10 rupees, then there are chances of finding even more notes of 10 rupees. So whatever, the cash that he gets in the garbage dumps, obviously that goes to his pocket money. So it is always a source of wonder for Sahib. Now I'm talking about this another important issue, even a shoe with a hole, a dream coming true for Sahib. Now what happened? One morning, the author saw Sahib standing outside the fenced gate of a neighborhood club. Two children inside, they were playing tennis. The author asked Sahib, "Do you like the game?" He said yes. But obviously that game was beyond his reach. So he couldn't play tennis. Then he told the author that whenever there is no one out here, the guard, security guard or the gatekeeper, he knows me and he allows me to get inside the park or the club and enjoy the swings. Then author noticed that Sahib was wearing a pair of tennis shoes, and of course tennis shoes are very costly, and it is beyond the financial capacity of Sahib to purchase that shoes. So she just looked at those shoes, and Sahib, in a manner of explanation, he said those shoes were discarded by some rich boy because of a hole in one of them. And then the author made the comment, and she said that even a shoe with a hole is a dream come true for a boy like Sahib who has remained barefoot throughout his life. A child like Sahib, he hasn't put on or worn any pair of shoes or pair of chappals. Now even if a shoe with a hole he gets that, this is almost his dream coming true. And last but not the least, when Sahib starts working at a tea stall. So one morning, the author saw Sahib carrying a steel canister on his shoulder, that is a milk cane, and when she asked him, "What is this?" then he told her that, well, he had started working at a tea stall where he was paid 800 rupees and all his meals. Now she asked him, "Are you happy working there?" He started looking towards other direction. The carefree looks on his face was gone, and it was clear that this steel canister was much heavier than the plastic bag which he used to carry on his shoulders. Sahib was no longer his own master. he was not happy because he had lost his freedom, as he had to work under the orders of the owner of the tea stall. So this is a typical kind of child labor which he was into. He lost his freedom. He had to work at the tea stall for the whole day. He didn't have control. He didn't have control over his own thinking because he was controlled by the owner of the tea stall. Now this is Law Spring Part 1. So I'll be bringing Law Spring Part 2, in which I'll be talking about Mukesh, a bangle making child, a bangle maker, and that I'll talk about. Then I'll talk about the chapter in my next video, which would come very shortly. So this video was for Law Spring Part 1, and please wait for my another video that will be about Law Spring Part 2, and then I'll be talking in details about the conditions of bangle makers in Firozabad. So with this, thank you guys, thanks guys for watching my video, and thanks for your appreciation which I'm getting on my videos, and thank you very much. And please don't forget to subscribe my channel if you haven't subscribed till now. Thank you so much.